We move on to item 11 or 12, which is the Garden Community Programme. This is paper H. I'm going to put my neck above the towel because that's why many people are here. Right, this paper is in the name of Councillor Cockrell because he is the portfolio holder place. For the reasons I gave earlier, Councillor Cockrell has a practical interest as a parliamentary candidate and cannot take part in the debate or the decision, more importantly. Councillor Radley has agreed to step up to the breach and to help introduce the item, and we've got officers present who will be able to help any technical questions that we raise. I will go to Councillor Radley first. I know some members of the public have indicated they want to speak. I'm sure others will. I will call you once we've got the information out. Okay. James, thank you.
So thanks. So I don't know where to begin thanking Councillor Cockrell for giving me this opportunity. There are a number of recommendations before us, and there has been a lot of debate about this. It has been through overview and scrutiny, and overview and scrutiny did a very thorough job of doing due diligence on this. And there were a few points that came out of that, some of them raised by Councillor Farmer there, that I was very disappointed to see in my version, but hadn't made it. But now I believe there's been some update that has rectified that. So before I go much further, I'd actually like to invite Councillor Farmer to say, has he seen the updates and do they compare with where he thinks we should have been in the first place?
Right, as Councillor Radley said, it was a very impassioned discussion and debate in overview and scrutiny, and I think they did it very thoroughly. All of the points were debated, points 1 to, or the recommendations were debated, points 1 to 8. There were 4 main changes to recommendations, I think, that scrutiny made. Recommendation 3 was a discussion and an addition around recognising land value capture, which I believe has now been captured in recommendation 3. There was recommendation 8. The original recommendation was that I think £500,000 be allocated. Overview and scrutiny suggested it be noted and considered at subsequent budget review, but I do notice that there's been a subsequent amendment to recommendation 8 in this paper, and I'm sure that will be debated at some point. The one big concern I've got is around recommendation 4, where there was an action to review the terms of reference and other associated pages, effectively Appendix 1 in this document. This is a key decision paper. Obviously, that was recognised and unfortunately withdrawn at the last Cabinet. And we have a situation tonight where the paper that was circulated for discussion on the website, and I'm thinking particularly of members of the public who are here tonight, haven't necessarily had the benefit of the late circulation of an amended Appendix 1. And I wonder whether both Cabinet members and members of the public have actually had an opportunity to look at the real terms of reference, because there were a number of changes made to those terms of reference around the whole governance structure, which I think are pertinent.
Would you like to
Yeah, absolutely. And Councillor Farmer and I had a very, very good and effective meeting to discuss these terms of reference, which came out of the conversation over views and scrutiny. And I can only apologise. This is something where the leader said, well, if you will go on your properly apportioned annual leave, these things happen while you go away. Version control has been an issue, but I can reassure the councillor that actually, if you look at the key decision version that has been on our website, that actually does reflect the updated version, which was the version that you and I discussed. So
Only from late this afternoon, because the version last night was the incorrect version, I believe.
I'm not.
Sorry.
Can I just be clear for members?
Yeah.
The paper for the Cabinet one was published last week. The document that Ms. Hughes is referring to is the key decision document that's been on our website for more than 28 days. And that is the accurate appendices in its totality on there. So members have had, in accordance with the law, 28 days to look at it. There is a mistake on this one in terms it didn't come through on there. But it's wrong to say that hasn't been out in the public domain as a key decision in its own right. You don't treat it as last minute key decision, it's the whole reason is 28 days, there was 28 days to look at it, so it has within the public domain.
Okay. Councillor Farmer, do you understand from what the officer has said why everything is as it should be, not omitting the fact it was a document that went out in hard copy to members and was the link on the website was the old appendices?
I would phrase it like this. I recognise they were their old appendices. I do recognise that a fresh Appendix 1 has been issued and is available this evening. Is probably as far as I would go this evening.
Right.
The implications of that.
Right, I apologise. I'll rephrase myself. What the officer is saying, as I understand it, and he will correct me if I get it wrong, is that the document was in the public domain, the correct appendix, but the appendix that went out as an attachment was an old version. So the document that we have in front of us now, which has been circulated, was always available, but it didn't go out with the paperwork.
I think the old Appendix 1 was attached to the papers that went, was it to the October, just a clarification for the October, rather than this November Cabinet, and has subsequently been reissued in this paper this evening, or later this afternoon.
Okay, I'm not quite sure we're quite agreeing with each other there, but in the interest of getting moving along, we'll leave it there. Right, okay.
Right.
So, Derek, please carry on.
So, thank you for that. So actually picking up on those points, I think I would like to revisit a few of the recommendations, and the two of them in particular, it's about clarity. In recommendation 3, it is true that we have added land value capture, and I think that we all welcome this. I think what I would like us to do is to note a clarification about what land value capture means, because there's lots of different definitions of land value capture in circulation within the industry. And what we're certainly looking for here is that if we get to the point that such a development goes ahead, that we as a council are not expecting the public purse to be funding the associated infrastructure, and that the value of the land is used by whoever brings this site into fruition to provide infrastructure. So we're going to get schools, we're going to get decent roads, we're going to get the required medical facilities, the public open space, the 40% affordable housing, not at the cost of the public purse, but as a realisation of the value of the land. And I think it's important that we clarify that and make sure that is very well understood. Picking up on the point about recommendation 8, when you read this, it's not obviously clear that what's actually being meant is we would do this through the budget process in February. And I think it would just help to add a note to it to say this is all about bringing this forward through the budget process in February, so that no one's left in any doubt and aren't expecting a special one-off paper to bring it to council. We're not. This will go through the full and proper budget process, and I'll be bringing that forward to the February council meeting, February cabinet, and we can discuss it in full there. This is basically flagging the principle that is what we're looking to do through our budget process. In terms of recommendation 4, which is the governance approach, having read through the governance document and listening to some of the concerns of others, I think it's probably worthy of us actually doing a little bit more work. For instance, if you read it, there seems to be a overemphasis on delivery. And I don't think anyone in this room should be confused. This is not about delivery. This is about formation of policy and design and looking at what is possible. It is nothing to do with the planning application. It's nothing to do with delivery. And I think we do need to change some of the wording again to make that point clear. And a suggestion that was made to me by Councillor Cockle before he ran off to try and become an MP was that actually what we need to do is set up a very small working group to go through the governance document and maybe make some minor changes to it, and then take those back to overview and scrutiny and get them to look at it. And he suggested that the 3 group leaders and the portfolio holder for place, which is himself, be delegated by this cabinet to go away and do that, and we might actually incorporate into that more of a formal plan as to what's going to be intended to be delivered, not in terms of how, but in terms of documentation and work done, so that we actually have a plan that we're working to. And I would like to change recommendation 4 to say that the Cabinet appoints a working group consisting of the 3 group leaders and the portfolio holder for place to go away and review the governance document with the idea of bringing it back to overview and scrutiny so that it can get agreed by February. Okay. And I'd like to make that change, propose that change as well. And then on that basis, subject to any debate, I'm happy to move the recommendations as put.
Okay, so you made observations on recommendations 3 and 8, but you don't think they need a wording change. It's only recommendation 4 that you're actually moving an amendment to.
I think as long as there's an associated note to tie to them, it's fine. I define what do we mean by land value capture, and noting that what we meant in recommendation, or maybe we could actually add it to recommendation 8, is, this is to go through the, which actually says as part of the normal budgeting process, but we could just add as to be decided in February, so people kind of know where it ties into our schedule of things.
Okay, on a couple of those amendments actually include what we have in front of us. Councillor Farmer, you've got...
Yes, it was just one point picking up on a point Councillor Radney made about recommendation 8. I accept that it's now reflecting that it go through the budget process. The only thing I would add is until initial stages of this work are completed, I think one of the debates at scrutiny was just how much money would be required, and I think the comment was that it might be up to 500 rather than an absolute, and that will be defined as we go through the process.
Okay, thank you for that. Jeff, comment on that?
Well, clearly this will come out as part of the budget setting process, but Councillor Farmer's absolutely right. It would always be up to 500, and it would be spread across a period of years. So, for instance, we thought the process was going to take 3 years, it would be spread across the 3 years. So much like when the government says they're giving £2 billion to schools or police or whatever, they actually mean they're going to drip feed it over the next 10 years, and they can keep mentioning it in every kind of opportunity they get. This will be something similar.
Moving swiftly on, will that help and contribute? Okay. Right.
Election on, you know.
Well, yes, but not with these 4 walls tonight, please. Right. Okay, that's been formally moved by Councillor Radley. Let's see if it has a seconder. Councillor Quarterman, thank you. Right, we now have a motion in front of us, so we can now go to questions and then we'll go to debate. So,
can I just ask Councillor Radley to give me that wording again?
For which one?
recommendation 4.
Recommendation 4.
Recommendation for us, see if I can come up with something that is suitable. That a small working group consisting of the portfolio holder for place and the 3 group leaders be put together. That this small group of 4 will be tasked with looking again at the proposed governance structure and the work streams needed over.
Yes. Go from task.
Just go back to yours, James.
I'm making up on the fly. I have to be tasked with looking again at the proposed governance structure and the work streams needed over the next 12 months. And that they be asked to report back to overview and scrutiny in February with revised governance structure and ideally a project plan.
Okay. Everyone can they understand the amendment? Ask if you agree with it. I'm not asking if you understand. Excellent. Right. Okay, so now it's questions. What I think I will do is I will try and get members of the public in now so they can make their statements, because that might provoke a question. So it's probably best if you have your time now. So I've got Mr. Carey and Mr. Todd. Mr. Carey, would you like to come to the microphone up there? That might help with video picking up the sound. Thank you.
Is that working?
That's fine, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. For some years, the Royal Heart Association has been frustrated by what we see as the bias of the Council in pushing for a new settlement near Winchfield without properly analysing the scope for alternative strategies, including urban regeneration. Our frustration led us last month to commission an opinion from leading council about a letter sent to our MP by 11 CCH councillors in July. This letter asserts that 5,000 more homes have been secured for the next planning period through Shapley Heath. The opinion has been delivered to the council with this statement, but in summary, the QC concludes that A. CCH's assertion is totally misleading. B. All CCH councillors must publicly retract their statement and must ensure that their future conduct demonstrates a genuine willingness to consider matters with an open mind. And C. Councillors who are unwilling to retract their statement must recuse themselves from decision-making relating to Shapley Heath. We therefore request that the councillors concerned recuse themselves from discussion and voting on this item. In addition, we expect the CCH councillors to take the following steps to comply with the QC's opinion that they must in future demonstrate a genuine willingness to act with an open mind. A. Abandon the current plans which focus exclusively on Shapley Heath. B. Implement an alternative work plan to examine objectively and partially all reasonable alternative options to Shapley Heath in line with the planning inspector's recommendations. This should include brownfield development and urban regeneration. C. Undertake in-depth work to build a more robust policy to regenerate our urban centres in Fleet, Blackwater, Hook and Yeakley. This work should in particular address policy ED5, Fleet Town Centre, to tackle the growing outflow of retail and leisure expenditure from the district caused by underinvestment in Fleet. It is essential to develop a new and comprehensive strategy to Fleet along the lines of neighbouring towns like Campbell and Farnham. D. Undertake thorough master planning for the main towns in Hart, without which no proper assessment can be made of the true scope of town centre mixed-use regeneration. E. Meet the two developers who did express interest in regenerating the Hart shopping centre to explore their proposals. And finally, F. Refrain from allocating Hart's reserve funds to Shapley Heath unless and until it is reinstated into the local plan as the result of the necessary comparative assessment work called for by the inspector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right. Councillor.
Given I'm the leader of the group that has been named, I feel I'm happy to kind of respond to this. I'll deal first of all with your second issue first, which is to do with the inspector's report and his requirement upon us to go and fully assess alternatives. That's absolutely correct, and that's absolutely what we must do in the process of preparing our next local plan when that gets reviewed. And that undoubtedly will happen, and it will undoubtedly get done in the fullness of time as thoroughly as the inspector required. This, what we're discussing today, is not part of that process. It's very different. This is an initiative to develop a strategy around a garden village. Whether it gets built or not is actually not part of this debate. If the government don't force any more housing on us, this development is not needed, it will never go ahead. It's all about taking time, using the opportunity that the government has given us by funding this project so that we can actually start to prepare for future years when the government might force housing upon us. It's not actually part of a new local plan. It is a separate piece of work altogether, and therefore it's not connected with the requirements that the inspector suggested that we should follow as part of that process. With regards to your QC's opinion, with due respect to him, he was basing it on one letter. A letter that he mused whether or not we want it to be in the public domain or not. Absolutely. When we write to our MP, we expect him to put it in the public domain. He's not our best friend, I can assure you of that. And when you write to a MP in a political sense, you actually are allowed to put in some political rhetoric. No one imagined for one moment that Boris Johnson really intended to die in a ditch if we didn't leave the EU. And when you're making rhetoric, when you're doing political rhetoric, you make statements basically to make a point. They are not necessarily what you absolutely do in your day-to-day life. And if your QC had benefit of actually talking to us, or actually seeing how we conduct ourselves in other domains, like for instance how we're conducting this meeting today, he would realise that we are not of a set mindset, and actually we are open-minded. But even if that were not the case, we are not considering a planning application today. We are not determining a planning application on its merits because there is no planning application. This is about formation of policy. And being predetermined does not make you prejudicial when determining policy. Policy formation is about having an open debate and people banding ideas about and making statements and testing them to see how they fly. And you're not constrained by what you say at future manifestations of the policy. This is policy, not planning, and that is a clear distinction. Further, although CCH councillors have made strong assertions in a particular direction, councillors of other parties have made strong declarations in the complete reverse direction. And using your QC's logic, they too would be prejudicial, and therefore no councillors would be able to make any decisions, and we would be in stalemate. And the process that you have when that happens is that exceptions get made and everyone gets allowed to vote again, because that's how you free up democracy. So I actually don't believe that we do need to retract our statements. I certainly don't feel compelled to retract my statement. I do acknowledge, for everyone's benefit, that this is not about a planning application. This is not about definitively delivering houses. This is about looking at one of the options that are open to us if, I think realistically, when we get to the stage the government policy is forcing us to build more houses. It was good for a change to actually have options other than completely doing what we've done in the past, which is keep growing new bolt-on settlements on the outskirts of the existing urban areas without having the economies of scale to deliver meaningful infrastructure. So this is about giving us an option to do it right at some future date when the housing numbers get to the stage that we need to build more. It does not rule out the other options. It does not rule out other sites. It does not rule out urban intensification. It does not rule out further bolt-on developments. It is simply working through an option which would normally take a lot, and we're going to take a lot of time to work through. So you get something that is fit for purpose for full consideration, because new settlements are complicated, and normally in the construct of a local planning process you don't get the time to fully flesh them out, and we're taking the time to plan ahead. So basically what we're doing is taking our time, using the opportunity that the government has given us some money to do it right for 5 or however many years down the road. When we get faced with difficult decisions to make, we've got an option we can weigh the balance. We certainly haven't ruled out the other options at all, and they will get considered in terms of the due process as and when we get to review our local plan. We haven't even got the first local plan in and adopted yet, so please give us some time. Thank you.
Okay, you want to briefly come back? I need to then go to the lodging officer.
If I could come back on a few points. The first is, if you say that you're taking this time to spend money and time to create policy, but you focus all that time and money on one of many possible opportunities, that we think that's biased towards that opportunity. Why have you chosen that one as opposed to any other, where it hasn't been shown to be deliverable or the best option? The second point I'd like to make is that CCH has always talked about the whole conflict, if you like, or debate being about urban extensions on the one hand and new settlements on the other. The opportunity for urban regeneration in the town centres with mixed-use developments has never been considered. It's never mentioned. And ED5, I think, is so weak I mean, it's 6 paragraphs long. In the local plan, the problems about Fleet falling behind its neighbouring towns was raised as a critical problem. The outflow of expenditure was raised as a critical problem. The answer to that is ED5, which is almost empty, and the Fleet local plan, the Fleet neighbourhood plan relies on it says we want to influence and say to Hart Council what we want to achieve, but Hart Council's plan, ED5, is absolutely appallingly weak. And so all that looks like bias. The other thing is, I think, not to have met the developers who did show an interest in investing in Fleet. It would be most equivalents of ED5, like the Camberley Town Centre plan, says we will work collaboratively with investors and try to bring forward schemes. So we had 2 developers who were interested in investing in Fleet. We gave them a Hart Shopping Centre as one of 4 sort of possible places that we thought would be suitable for development. They said, yes, we're interested, but we're not interested while Hart is showing such an obvious bias towards a new settlement. But we said, well, why don't you come and meet them anyway? And we asked, Councillor Crooks asked a question of Councillor Cockerell, saying, what will you do about this? And Councillor Cockerell's response to that was, they can put in a pre-planning application. That seems to me astonishing, that here is a developer who wants to invest money to make Fleet better, and you won't even speak to them.
Okay.
So I think I don't agree. I think
we haven't done this.
Okay, thank you.
I think the most important point you've raised is your QC's opinion, and I would ask the monitoring officer, in the light of the statement from Councillor Radley, where do we as a council stand on the issue of members having to recuse themselves?
I have taken advice as well on this matter, and it's very clear advice is that this paper is purely about exploring an option. People are allowed to have a disposition, and they may have a very strong disposition, but it's not predetermination. And the letter that's been talked about, I think Councillor Radley has adequate defend. It is in a different context. You can't translate that through to close mind in a debate that explores. The decision on whether we proceed, or the council proceeds with a new settlement option, whether it be here or anywhere else, or the urban extensions, etc., we've made by council at the appropriate time. As this report points out, this is not a decision to build a new settlement. Nobody's closing their options behind that, and the council as a whole will make a decision on whether it's actually built into the project in the light of the findings of this investigation. So in that sense, the barrister that I've taken advice from is absolutely clear, is that members can participate, the localism act allows it, there is no bias being shown by members agreeing to carry on to do exploratory work, as you would normally do at this stage in any proposal, if you actually haven't looked at the review of the local plan at an early time, as the inspector said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Radley James, in the light of the comments by Mr. Carey and the responses from Mr. Willis, is there anything further you wish to say at this point?
I always wish to say a lot further, but in the interest of progressing this discussion, I'll hold my thoughts on the intensification of fleet urbanisation for another day.
Excellent. Right.
May I make a point? The key point that the QC's opinion addressed was, yes, it's fine to be exploring options outside the local plan process. That's absolutely fine. The point that crossed the line was essentially telling an untruth about the status of Shapley Heath by saying that 5,000 houses had been secured, and that the fact that you were supporting it by telling an untruth was the determination factor that made it, crossed it from predisposition to predetermination.
Okay, but again, you have heard the legal advice we have is this is not a planning application.
Yeah, but
it's
it's a planning application.
should I?
Yeah.
We can only go on the evidence presented. We have the QC's opinion from the Rural Heart Association, which thank you for sending it to us, that was useful. We've had a response. We've had statements from the members concerned. And
however, the response didn't address the key point.
I'm happy to address the
no, please don't. We've got a lot to get through, Mr. Turber. I suspect you're one of the individuals who probably will not impress at any point in this meeting.
Thank you for coming. Please be attentive and listen, but we're going to try and get to the business. Okay. Mr. Todd, you wish to raise a point?
Thank you, Chairman and members. I'm speaking on behalf of the Campaign to Protect Rural England North East Hampshire District Group. Very briefly, CPRE supports a plan-led system and recognises that new settlements can be a solution to providing new housing. However, their merits must be explored within the local plan framework. Pursuing a garden community alongside but independent of the local plan sets a dangerous precedent. Therefore, CPRE would urge you to reject all the recommendations apart from number 7. You are at risk of committing the district to a new garden community on top of agreeing to meet local housing needs. In your vision document of November 2018, provided to the government in the bid for funding, you stated that Hart would build up to 5,000 homes over and above local requirements. That's on page 2. With an indication that there was a capacity for a development of 10,000 homes. That's on page 14. The funding that the government has awarded HDC was granted on the basis of that commitment. Far from relieving the development pressures on other greenfield sites across the district, the garden community proposal introduces an additional artificial growth point to meet national housing targets. That's on page 21. This fails to protect any other sites in the district. It will transmit into higher housing needs in the future and will increase the requirement to build on the edge of settlement sites in all of Hart's towns and villages. This is precisely the opposite of what local residents across the whole district are demanding. If you are determined to proceed with the garden community project, it is vital that you make an initial resolution to the effect that Hart District Council will manage a phased release of development sites such that no new homes are built except those needed to meet the calculated local requirements. Without such a resolution, residents will know that you really do intend to increase the development pressures on towns and villages, not to relieve them. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Todd. Councillor Rabbit, are there any... Sorry. That's fine. Councillor Todd. Sorry, Councillor Rabbit.
Is there anything specifically in the point that Mr. Todd has raised on behalf of CPRE that you wish to address?
Yeah. The absolute overriding policy for the number of houses that we are to build in this district is our local plan. Our local plan is very far advanced. It has only this week helped us defend the 700 houses going in at Pale Lane. And the local plan, once it is adopted, is robust for as long as it is compliant with national planning policy and as long as it is up to date in terms of our objectively assessed housing need. This council need not make any pronunciation on future housing numbers at this time because it is set in concrete in our local plan. Once it is adopted, we are there, it is done. This is simply an exercise in evaluating future options. It does not commit us to anything. It doesn't commit us to any housing numbers in the future. It doesn't commit us to building this new settlement. It's simply providing an option for the future.
Okay. Mr. Todd, is there anything you want to come back on before we move on to other people who might wish to speak?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Councillor Radley and just to remind him that the housing target set in the local plan is a minimum, not a maximum. And if Hart District really did want to stick to the lowest housing figures as set in the local plan, why on earth did you ask the government for money on the basis that you wished to build up to 5,000 homes over and above local requirements? Why ask them for the permission to build 5,000 houses that are totally unnecessary in the district?
There is a mistake that has been repeated for decades now, where this council pauses for breath and doesn't plan for the future. It is almost inevitable, if you look at the rhetoric coming out of the government, coming out of all the parties, about the need to fill the gap in terms of housing need in this country. We would be naive, bordering on negligent, if we didn't start to plan to anticipate for the number of houses that we expect to be forced by the government to deliver in future years. And that is why we are starting this process now, because we can evaluate an option which can be considered alongside other options at a future date by this council when it has to review its local plan, because the basis on which our housing numbers are calculated changes. The government changed those rules periodically, and they've told us that those rules are always open for continual review and revision, and therefore it would be a dereliction of duty for us not to pursue an activity such as this to look for alternatives. That's the mistake that's been made countless times before, and that is why we have the situation we have at the moment, where you cannot park at Fleet Station after about 8 o'clock in the morning. You have a school which is being expanded to 2,200 places. You have got congestion on all our road junctions. That's what happens when you don't bite the bullet and start planning for the future. And while I'm on this council, and while I have some influence on this council, I will not be standing by and making that mistake again.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Todd, do you have any more comments you wish to make at this stage?
I think my comments have fallen on deaf ears, so there's no point in proceeding.
Okay. Right, there are members of the public who want to speak. I do apologise, I've forgotten the lady's name in the front row. You've spoken several times before council.
Yes.
I apologise for being remiss.
Christine Strudwick. Thank you. I agree with Mr.
Right,
Sorry.
come to my phone
Certainly.
simply because it's being videoed. They won't pick up your voice if you're not speaking to the microphone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Christine Strudwick. I'd just like to make the point that, thank you, Mr. Todd, for very good words. I don't always disagree with Mr. Radley. I think planning ahead is very, very important. But I do think that the arguments that have gone on this council over the last 5-10 years, the infighting that has gone on, is actually what's brought us to where we are today. I would love to see some proper planning ahead, but I would like to see a council that's working together for the residents. And I can assure you that we've got an awful lot of residents out there that don't want any extra at the station, Mr. Radley. Where are you going to put another 5,000 cars, commuters going to the station? They're not going to go to Winchfield. There isn't room there either. Where are you going to put all of these cars for all of these people that are coming into this district just because we've built houses? Where are you going to put them? You go through Elvertham Heath in the morning, the queue is back beyond Morrison's filling station, trying to join the Elvertham Heath Bridge. If you build at Shapley Heath, all of those cars are going to join that same queue. I'm sorry, but your thinking is not good, solid planning. It's lacking solid future planning. And can I just close by saying, whether or not the truth was told to the government is neither here nor there. The grant applied for was for £150,000 to do the exploratory work. Please explain to me, as a ratepayer, why I should be supporting up to £500,000 from the public purse to be spent as needed on this project. I don't support that, and I don't think you've asked your ratepayers whether they do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We send that microphone off.
Probably, James.